Last week, I had a chance to teach a short class at Western Realty in Las Vegas on some appraisal concepts. Really nice group of people. I enjoyed it a lot, had a good time. Some of the questions that came up had to do with adjustments or how do certain aspects or certain characteristics of a home affect its value. This is something that comes up a lot when I'm speaking to realtors, so I wanted to address a couple of those things here. For example, if you have a house that backs up to the freeway and you've got all that traffic noise, how much does that affect the value? Or I have a two-story house I'm trying to value. All I have is one-story comps. Can I use those, and what kind of adjustment to make? How much would that affect the value? What direction? So let's talk about it. At the end of our meeting, I passed out a survey asking their opinions on some of those questions, and I thought it would be interesting to see if the opinions of agents are closely aligned with those of appraisers. This here is a summary of the results from the survey. Before I can start discussing numbers, though, let me just first do my little disclaimer. Let's not assume that the numbers I discuss here are something you can make financial or valuation decisions on. Appraisers have a lot of other techniques, and there's a wide variety of results, situational depending on properties. But with that said, if you were in the class and gave me your card, I'm going to email you the results, and this video will hit some of the highlights. This is really for my class at Western Realty, but the rest of you, if you want to listen in, feel free to do so. So let's get started. First question we want to talk about is backing up to a freeway. So if you're backing up directly to the freeway and have that attendant traffic noise, how much does that affect the value of the property? Well, according to the survey of agents said roughly 10%. So you'd have a negative impact of 10%. So we've done a lot of studies on the effect using what we call grouped paired analysis. And this is one where we took these homes right along the freeway, compared them to the median value of homes off the freeway. And actually, this 10% is in the ballpark. It might be a little bit higher than what we typically use, but it's actually a pretty good number. So score 1 for the realtors. Next one, what if you have a home with only 2 bedrooms? Most homes in today's world have 3 or more bedrooms. So how would that affect the value? Let's take a look at what the realtors said. The survey said negative 6%. The results we've had, that actually, again, is within our range. I mean, we've had anything from, say, 1.2% to 9%. But the median usually huddles a little bit lower than this 6%, but that is definitely in the ballpark. So next, let's talk about 1-story homes versus 2-story homes. Which has more value and by how much? So 1-story homes, 2-story homes. Realtor survey says 1-story wins and by 10%. So does that line up with what appraisers are coming up with? Well, we've done a lot of studies on this, and actually 10% again is right there in the ballpark. We've had some studies that show quite a bit more than that, and some studies that show less. So again, score another point for the realtors. Good job. Also, we've done 3-story versus 2-story studies, and turns out in this case the 2-story value is higher by not as big of a margin, but it is noticeable. All right, let's look at another one, a condo project. All right, so if you're looking at a condo project with 2 stories, you can have a condo on the first floor or the second floor. Which floor gives you the greatest value? And survey of realtors, they thought that the second floor would be higher and by about 5%. We've done some research on that too. We've done quite a few studies, and actually, this is one where I'd have to disagree. Sometimes it doesn't seem to matter. There have been occasions where the second story is slightly higher, but for the most part, first story brings a little bit more money, probably because people value not having to walk up those stairs more than maybe the vaulted ceilings or less noise of the upper level. All right, next question. Corner lot versus interior lot, which one sells for more? Okay, here we have the corner lot. Here we have the interior lot where you've got homes on both sides. Corner lot, you've got a little greater privacy because you've only got a home on one side, and maybe you could say also a little more parking area if people wanted to park next to your home. Realtors decided corner lot was better by 5%. How does that line up with what our studies have shown? Actually, again, the direction is right. I would say the 5% is maybe a bit overstated. Usually we get very minor results for corner versus interior lot. We do get extractable results, but they're pretty minor, but the direction here is correct. All right, now let's talk about investor renovation. So if you have a home flip of a 20-year-old home, maybe it's in bad shape, maybe it's outdated, how much difference does that make in the value? Right, here's our recently renovated home, and the agents believe maybe 15%. That's what the survey says. Actually, the direction, of course, is obviously right, but we've been coming up with some greater than 15% results usually. A couple of recent studies, none this year, but last year, showed something in the 20s or the 30s. This home that we showed a picture of is actually a good example. This home sold for $340,000 in 2024. And then 3 months later, $490,000. That is a 44% difference. Now that's on the high side, but this is how these home flippers make money. There is a big difference. So here's the before, here's the after. These are out of the MLS. Backyard before, after. They did quite a renovation on this property. Before, after, in the kitchen. You can see that originally this home was not in good shape at all, and they really did a nice job on it. All right. Next, let's talk about seller concessions. All right. So if you have an agreed upon price for a property and then come back and decide, hey, let's let the seller pay some of the buyer's closing costs, does that have any effect on the value? And according to Realtors, no, it really doesn't. And I would say you are correct on that. Just because we've changed some things in the contract hasn't changed anything about the house itself. So value of the house doesn't change. If you start adding concessions and pumping up the price, that's where you could run into problems. All right, next. Now we're talking about a high-end subdivision. This is where we find the greatest variance on modern versus traditional style homes, okay? So here's your traditional style home, and here's your modern style home. Real estate agents say, yes, there is a difference. Which is more, the modern, and by how much? 5%. This is one that's really difficult to extract. It's hard to get all the other variables consistent and only isolate, at least in our MLS system, the modern style versus traditional style. But I will say that 5% is within the ballpark of what we've discovered before, and we've actually used that amount of adjustment at times on prior appraisals. So score another one for the Realtors. That there's a wide variation, but 5% is definitely in the ballpark. Next, let's talk about across the street from a subdivision park. So if you got a property that's across the street from a park, does that affect the value positively or negatively? I think we'd all agree that there's a positive effect on value. Real estate agent survey says 5% to the better. And once again, that lines right up in the ballpark with what we've seen in past studies. Okay, those are a few of the highlights. It's important to remember that when an appraisal is doing an assignment, these adjustments can vary widely. It's highly situational. The point to this exercise is that appraisers and agents usually line up pretty well, especially when you get a group of agents doing a survey and you get the sort of the group results. If you've ever heard of the phrase, the wisdom of crowds, It refers to a concept that when you take the aggregate opinion of a large group of people, a lot of times the results are more accurate than what, say, a single expert or a group of specialists might come up with. James Surowiecki popularized the concept of the wisdom of crowds in his book by that name in 2004. Although the idea itself dates back a lot further. There's a famous early example from a fellow named Francis Galton in 1907. He observed that the average guess of a crowd at a country fair for the weight of an ox is nearly perfect, much closer than most individual guesses. Appraisers, we try to be scientific about it. We've got a variety of methods to estimate the contributory value of different home characteristics. When we can, we rely on statistical techniques using MLS data. But when quantitative data is limited, another recognized technique is a survey of market participants or market experts. And to me, the ultimate expert participants are real estate agents. So that's all for now. Until next time, this is Tom Boyce from Value Able Appraisals. If you have any further questions, we're happy to help.